In this music production masterclass, let's have a look at automation. Automation is not generally a complicated thing, but we're going to use it in the sense of sound design. So let's hop over to our DAW and have a look at what we can do with it. So here we are in Fender Studio Pro. So let's have a look here. I'm going to grab up. So I've got this little plucked instrument. I'm going to take all the effects off of the instrument just so that we can kind of use the automation to allow us to create a little bit more of our own sort of interesting effects. Let's take off these delays. I'm going to keep the compressor just because it keeps the instrument a little bit more aggressive. Okay, so a little bit more of a raw sound for us here. And we're going to hop into our automation and let's use some sound design or use automation for the purpose of sound design to try and create some more interesting things. So the first thing I would want to do is throw on our EQ. For me, the EQ is such a great way to filter in and out frequencies, and this is a great way to try and create movement within your track. When you filter out the highs and you go more to the mid-range and you bring it back in again, you'll notice that your track will have this like swell kind of effect. The frequencies move in and out as we move that high cut filter across. So let's have a little look here. Usually around this 500 hertz range is where you'll find you'll get that nice midpoint cutoff. Okay, 200 is actually a great one. Okay, so I quite like that sound. Before I start dialing in the EQ, what I'm going to do just to give this a little bit more spunk and movement is we're going to throw on an arpeggiator onto the track. Now the arpeggiator is going to allow us to again create more movement as our notes play amongst each other. I'm not a pianist, so I can't physically play it like that. So I'm going to just sustain some basic notes to create a nice arpeggiated sound, and then we're going to go from there. So I'm going to record it so that I've got that loop to play with. I just set my tempo to a straight 120 BPM. And we're going to record just a little basic riff. I'm going to loop that, and then I'm going to start building on with some more automation. And then we're going to re-record it again with the automation, creating our movement and our flow. But because we then have it in place, I can then play around with some of the other notes and stuff. So I'm going to just put a basic idea together for now as we go along. So I don't generally need this to be all that perfect. I'm kind of just mapping out the bars for now so that I can play around with it a little bit more. So now we've got that EQ in set at our 200 hertz range. Now we're going to automate that. So now we're not going to worry too much about this being super complex, but we're going to set this movement at a halfway point. So you'll see here that the 5 bars is basically our halfway point, and this is where we're going to notice that the EQ is going to cause this instrument to kind of swell in and then come out again. So now in hearing it, it feels like it takes a bit long for it to sort of swoop the frequencies out and back in again. So I'm going to do it a little bit more aggressively, and we're going to move it bar for bar. Now it'll swoop out that 200 hertz and then back in again to our 7,000 hertz range. And I don't know if you're hearing that, but as it goes up to the few thousand hertz range, you're hearing how it's got this like that sound that's kicking in. Now that you may see that as that's a fault of sorts, but I'm going to see that as being its own little percussive aspect. I quite like how it creates that little rumble. So sweeping in and out, kind of nice. Let's throw on some reverb, and we're going to automate some of the reverb in there. really love the drama of the reverb. But now, again, we're going to automate this. This is meant to give us some more character within this instrument. Let's have a listen to what we got. Nice, I quite like how that moves. Now you'll notice that when it reaches that high point of the, over here, where it reaches that high point of the previous automation, where the EQ sweep was, this little point over here. So we were kind of watching that point and then utilizing the reverb, or having the reverb really get extreme or sort of dramatic as it reaches that point. So as the instrument is opening up and the frequencies are being revealed, we're then throwing the reverb on top of it, giving it more drama as it gets more dramatic. Then as it scoops back out again, we bring that reverb down a little bit, basically to taste however you like it, but that's sort of the idea that we sort of playing around with. Let's throw on a little bit of delay. And the delay is going to allow us to kind of throw in a little bit of extra notes in between. Because this is a plucked instrument, it's got that percussive aspect to it, so it's a knocky kind of instrument. Now when we throw the delay on there, as that plucked sound creates that knock effect, you get a little bit more extra notes from the delay, and we're going to then offset the delay with a triplet sort of vibe and see if we can throw in some extra notes with the delay, and then we're going to automate that to see what else we can kind of get with it. Let's be particular and use a beat delay, and let's see what we get. Did you notice that when we threw the mix all the way to the top, notice how the depth was pulled out of all the other instruments or out of all of the other plugins? And we got this like flutter effect and it comes back out again. Let's use it as a glitch effect. We're gonna automate the main mix and we're gonna let it just kind of scoop in quickly. Let's see what happens if we make it super aggressive just quickly. Right there would be a cool spot to have it almost like glitch again. All right, cool. So we just used 3 different plugins right now for implementing our automation. We've got the Pro EQ, or the EQ for the sake of sweeping frequencies. We've got the reverb to create a little bit more drama and space, and then we've got the delay, which in this case we've used it to sort of create a little bit of like a glitch effect. These are the 3 that I'm going to use for now. You can always get more extreme and throw some other things in there. Some of the things I like to even throw in is some distortion, have the instrument get gritty and then come back out again. All depends on what you want to create, but you can layer so many different sounds over each other or plugins over each other and automate them. So now, as I mentioned before, the instrument was irrelevant. We didn't need this part. So I'm going to take that away, and now I'm going to play into these automations to help me now design the playing part that I want.